This is Battleground PA, a PennLive podcast discussing the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians and documenting the events in the Keystone State and beyond that could shape how you vote in the 2024 elections.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm coming to you again with a Battleground PA podcast. This is Joyce Davis. I'm PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and I am joined by my cohorts here, my expert team of analysts, Rogette Harris, who's hailing for the Democrats, and Jeffrey Lord, who is coming up for the Republicans. Welcome, guys. How are you today?
Oh, happy snow day.
Happy snow day, exactly. But Jeffrey, look, you're our friend, right? But you're a celebrity. you're a big deal guy. So tell me what happened this week with you and when the former president visited. What happened?
Well, I was booked to go to the rally along with 10,000 of my best friends, and that's fine. And I'm getting ready to go, and they said that they had a seat for me, reserved for me, which turned out to be in the front row, which was nice. And then just as I'm getting ready to go out the door, they said, "He wants to see you."
He wants to see you. Okay, got
Uh-oh.
it. Right.
So I thought he must have gotten word from Rogette that I was misbehaving or something like that. So I drove over there, and they told me to look for so-and-so. A certain advance man was going to find me, and red tie, blue tie, that kind of thing. And then once located, they took me to the behind the stage things, and there were curtains all set up in little individual rooms, and they had different people who were there for to say hello to him and do photographs. And I was added to a group that included Congressman Scott Perry and Guy Reschenthaler from out in Western Pennsylvania and Dan Muser from up north. And so we just waited one by one, and time came, and I went up to him, and he wanted to be reminded of when my mother had passed. And I said 2018. Because he was very, when I got to know him a decade ago or more, he wanted to know why I was here, as opposed to not still living in Washington. I told him I was taking care of my mother and all this.
What do you mean? This is the center of the universe. I don't get that question, but right?
So he said to me, "Well, that tells me everything I need to know about you. Most guys ditch their mothers."
Oh, yeah.
So I'm watching you, Cole. You better behave.
Exactly. You tell him. You tell him. But Jeffrey, really, honestly, that must have made you proud. And but I'm just a bit concerned that there's not a lot of security around the former president if they let you in. That's all right.
I'd be more concerned if they let Rogette in.
There you go. Well, look, let's get down to business, guys. There's a lot going on. And I mean, I know you have you're a supporter of the president and all, but I'll tell you, there were some disturbing statements coming out. And I know he likes to kind of, prick at people and get people upset sometimes just to get things stirring. But that to say you might abandon NATO or encourage Putin to, Rogette, what are your thoughts on that? That stirred people up a little bit, I think.
Well, it's classic Trump. He's the king of getting free media, free attention. We all know he loves to make all types of comments, get everyone riled up, and then we see what's true and what's not. He's made comments like this in the past, so it didn't really surprise me much.
Well, Jeffrey, does he mean that? I mean, but just to say
I think
it,
what he means. I mean,
it's scary.
This is classic Trump in the sense that, remember, this is the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal and negotiating. And I think his end point here is that all of these NATO allies need to pay their fair share and get their dues up to snuff and do all of that. So this is his way of prodding them. And I think to some degree it has worked. But
I'm gonna tell you, I hear what you're saying, and I understand it. But some of that stuff to me ought to just be done behind the scenes. Like when I sit down with the prime minister or the president of Egypt or something, then I tell him, you know what, I might let him come through if you don't. Not necessarily. It's because you're not only speaking to the leaders, you're speaking to the people. The very people don't understand, and they get scared. I mean, honestly,
I mean,
that's my concern.
I think his point is that when you do this publicly, it puts pressure on them, and that's what he intends to do, is to put the pressure on them to do more.
Right. Well,
But that's why it's
When you
classic
think about
Trump.
it, um, history keeps rolling along here. NATO was created in 1949. I think I'm correct about that date. The Cold War is over. And I certainly well remember, as a member of the Reagan White House staff, the criticism that Ronald Reagan took for all sorts of things he said about the Cold War. When asked what his answer was to his critics, or how to deal with the Cold War, and he said it's very simple: we win and they lose.
well, right. But I'm
Highly
concerned. I mean,
controversial in the day.
we've got hot wars going on right now, and they involve directly Vladimir Putin and his threat to Europe and his threat to our allies. So, I mean, I just didn't think it was very wise.
But that's why it's classic Trump, because that's what he does. He bullies people to try to get what he wants. And I think this is just another example as to why he lost in 2020, and why a lot of independents have lost the Republican Party and have voted in Democrats over the past few years.
Well, before
because
we
we
get
don't
too,
want
too
that.
comfortable, right? I hear before we get too comfortable simply talking about Trump's foibles, we got to talk about Biden too, because I mean, all of this hoopla over, is he really mentally fit, and where things are? I mean, that also is causing us some anxiety as a nation, and I guess the world, if they think somebody's in the White House and yet, Jeffrey, you had a guy in there that you loved who we think had Alzheimer's, may have been the beginning of that, right? Wasn't that the case with Ronald Reagan?
Oh, that's what they tried to say, but I was there. He
You
didn't
were
have
there.
Alzheimer's,
But that's what people are telling us now. They say we're there with Biden, he's okay. But you're saying you were there with
Well,
Reagan.
the thing with President Biden is that in this day and age of television, not to mention social media, you can't escape. For those in the audience who may not remember the tale of Woodrow Wilson, he goes over in 1919 to negotiate the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I, and he was very much in favor of his idea of a League of Nations. He got
Right.
it through. He got it through the Treaty of Versailles, but then he had to come back, and the U.S. Senate and all that sort of thing. So Wilson gets the idea to get on a train and do a cross-country trip, giving speeches and campaigning for the League. He gets to, as I recall, somewhere outside Boulder, Colorado. He's not feeling well. It's nighttime. They stop the train, walk him around in a farmer's field, then put him back on the train. They're outside Kansas City the next morning, and he gets up to get dressed to give a speech. And his wife, who was with him, takes one look at him and says, "You're not doing
Can't
this."
do it. Yep.
So they put out a statement saying he was suffering from exhaustion. They turn the train around, go back to Washington. 2 days later, she finds him on the bathroom floor. He'd had a stroke.
Yep.
So they more or less seal him off, his wife, his doctor, and his chief of staff. And they don't tell the public what's going on. And so history records what happened. Mrs. Wilson ran the government. And my question is, what's really going on? And frankly, I don't think we're going to find out what's really going on in the Biden White House here.
Well, Biden is appearing before the camera. It's just that, as many presidents do, you flub here and there. As many people do, you flub. But Rogette, let's talk a little bit more. You said Scott Perry was in the room with him when he went to meet the president, the former president. And we've got some Democrats lining up, but I think there's some news on that front, right? How many candidates are going to be competing in this election against Perry?
We have 6 Democratic candidates who made the ballot to run against Scott Perry.
All right.
And Scott Perry even has a Republican challenger. So he has a primary himself, let alone whoever wins the Democratic side.
Right. So does that make it easier, you think, for you guys to kind of navigate with only 6 instead of 8?
Well, it's going to spend a lot of resources on the primary. So hopefully whoever prevails will still have resources for the fall. I do know that as a party, we're definitely going to unite, and I expect resources to come from the national level to help whoever wins the primary.
Ah, yes, because this is an important, as we know, this is an important battleground state for not only the presidency, but for, for the Senate and the House, right? I mean,
Right, because
you know,
this could help the Democrats get control of the House again. So winning this seat would be very important. But real quick on the previous issues the two of you
yeah.
were talking about, if we want to talk about state of mind, we can also talk about, Donald Trump's state of mind. Not only because of his actions and things he says, but don't forget, he's only 2, 3 years younger than President Biden. So, if the Republicans really was worried about age, I think Nikki Haley would be doing a lot, a lot better right now. I did see she made the ballot for Pennsylvania, and our primary is not until April 23rd, so she does intend to go the whole way out.
I wonder if
But
you'll come
but
here
we
to
want to talk
campaign.
about age. Let's talk about both of them and what that entails, not
Well, yeah,
just
and honestly, everybody flubs here and there. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, even former President Trump confused Pelosi with Haley. So it's like
I mean, it's a legitimate issue. I'm not
yeah,
going to say it's not a legitimate issue.
no,
It is
it is,
for everyone. But I
but
think too, with age doesn't just come experience in years, it also brings wisdom and it also brings life experience. I
but
personally think that the president should joke about his age. That might even help him connect with younger voters. That's what I love about comedians. They're able to poke fun at themselves and kind of laugh.
Jeffrey is right. You can't hide. Sooner or later, you're out there. It's
And
going to come out, whatever you are, right? On
and
either
and the,
side.
and the other thing, Joyce, is every single human being on earth is physically unique and
Yep,
they age differently.
that's
And
Correct.
true.
I am sure we have all met people in their 80s and their 90s who are sharp as a tack, and we've met people in their 50s who are less than stellar. Um, I mean, that's just stuff that's beyond anybody's control. Joe Biden's, Donald Trump's, yours, mine, Rogette's, et cetera. And we just have to, as somebody was saying to me today, I had a dinner date that had to be canceled with the wife of the late Gil Parthamore, who runs the funeral home. The snow and all this and getting out and all this kind of thing. And she, in essence, said to me, boy, this old age stuff is tough.
Not cracked up.
And it is.
Right. No, I hear you. And you're right. It's unique. But the truth is, we will know because sooner or later both men have to come forward and speak. And then we will judge for ourselves who's what. And it is not age, but it's aptitude and your ability and your energy and what you bring to the table. So, but let's move on because another issue that's still out there that we're dealing with is the wars, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East, this Biden seems to be having some what do you call it, some gaps in how he views all of this with Netanyahu, with the Prime Minister of Israel. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? What are you hearing, Rogette, about how Biden might be moving to kind of change some of his staunch policies standing with Israel?
I haven't heard anything about the president changing his support for Israel. I do know that there was working on an agreement as far as getting aid and obviously trying to support a ceasefire to help the Palestinians as well. Because as we know, there's been deaths on both sides, but the president has always been strong with Israel. I have not heard any change with that whatsoever. I have heard, though, that the deal that he was working with the Congress has fallen through.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey, I mean, has former President Trump spoken on this at all?
I don't know if he has lately, but he is most assuredly very pro-Israel. And, I think they have a building or an orchard or a road or something named for him over there. But, one of the things that I think Democrats, that President Biden has to cope with, there is a chunk of the Democratic constituency that is very anti-Israel and very pro-Arab, if you will, et cetera. And politically speaking, when you go to Michigan, there are chunks of Michigan. This is why I think you see members of the so-called squad who are very anti-Israel. It's because their constituents are some of them are from these Arab countries,
Absolutely, yeah. Well, they
so
have relatives, their families there, they have people
exactly.
dying there that, I mean,
So I just think it's a political problem for President Biden, and I have no idea how he's going to handle it. But that's the way.
I would like to change the terminology, though. It's not being against Israel. We do have a section in the Democrat Party, particularly our younger voters. I know the debate that I organized with our congressional candidates, we had 300 plus people there when I hosted that. And we had a large Palestinian group there. And what they're concerned about is that there's deaths on their side as well that they feel as though is being forgotten. So, I don't want to use the word anti-Israel. Everyone believes Israel has a right to defend themselves. But yes, there is a section of this country that believes that the deaths that are being experienced on the other sides deserves sympathy and help as well.
Well,
So I
it's not only in
understand
this
that
country, it's all over the world. I mean, people,
yes.
I heard, I'm from New Orleans. I heard that the Mardi Gras parades were basically standing with trying to bring attention to the Palestinians.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's what I've heard today. So I'm going to check into that. So it's a global thing. Nobody likes to see innocent people suffer. That's what
Right.
it's
And I think
about. It's
that's
just,
where we need to focus that all lives matter. And for some people, it seems as though that all lives don't matter as much as others. I think that's where the focus is. No one is saying that Israel doesn't have the right to defend themselves. No one's saying they don't support Israel, but it's that fact that their lives, the innocent on the other side, lives matter just as much.
yeah.
So that's the point that they're trying to make.
And I do think this is going to become more and more of an issue in the campaign, on for both sides to basically come out and say what they want, because we're just hearing that this is becoming an issue. But let's also talk a little bit about, let's get closer to Pennsylvania. Let's talk about the governor and his budget, and I'd like it just to get a little bit more insight, Rogette. He laid out some wonderful things in that budget. And there's apparently money to cover what he's laid out, because there are going to be billions left over. So where are things standing now with regard to supporting some of these things? I'm particularly concerned about supporting those families that have people who really need round the clock care, and their inability to get what they call direct support professionals in to help them because they can't pay them enough. The rates are too low. But what are you hearing about the opposition? Is that to the governor's budget?
Well, the Democrats only have the majority by one vote.
One
It's
vote.
100 to 101. There's special elections. We have one going on today in Bucks County. Bucks County is purple and can go either way. So there's a lot of politics too, as far as what happens with the governor's budget. Unfortunately, we are in a time now where working together makes it look like a win for the president for the governor, when in reality it's a win for all of Pennsylvania, not just for the governor and the Democrat Party. But unfortunately, that's not how we think. So the makeup of that race today, and of course this year's elections, will say a lot as far as that budget getting passed in June. And then don't forget, and I did check, Pennsylvania is the only state with a divided legislature. So we are the only state with divided legislature. So the Republicans still have the Senate, regardless of what happens with this special election. So I do think that there are going to be obstacles to the governor's budget, even though he has found other revenue sources to fund a lot of the programs that he wants to do.
Well, it just goes to show you that we have local issues and national issues that voters are going to have to pay attention to as well. Now, Jeffrey, I wanted to talk to you too a little bit more about, as you're looking out at all of the court battles that are claiming the former president's time. I mean, what are your thoughts on how he's going to manage all of this? I mean, he's got a campaign that's going to be pretty intense, right? But he's got all of these legal issues and appearances in court. Now he's referred something else to the Supreme Court. How is that possible?
Yeah,
If
I
he
mean,
can manage it.
this requires immense amounts of time. There's no question about that. The thing that I find curious in all of this, I mean, because this is all unprecedented, and you would think on the surface that for him to have these legal problems, his polls would tank. In point of fact, and it's now
Yeah, I
become
don't
a
get it.
joke
I
in
don't get
Frontland,
it.
every time he's indicted, his polls go up. And he jokes, that he hopes he gets a few more here before the election because his polls will be out of sight. I really don't know I do know what to make of it. I mean, my personal view is that this is the American political legal establishment not dealing well with an outsider. And, in terms of the things he promises to do, just in Washington with the bureaucracy to set up term limits for all the career employees and things like that. That's a real threat
Well,
to,
it's a real threat also in a bad way because sometimes you lose a lot of expertise and you
so,
lose, I
so
mean,
it's things, I'm
yeah,
just saying it's things like that that have stirred
yeah.
the hornet's nest here, and we will see how this plays itself out. And every presidential cycle, it's sort of a top-down situation. It affects governors and senators and all of this. I remember back to 1980, state Republican parties around the country were having problems getting their A-list candidates for the U.S. Senate. So they wound up picking their B or C list candidates.
Mm.
Reagan landslide arrived, and all of a sudden, these people woke up in the morning and they were U.S. senators. And the first time since 1954, I think Republicans had control of the Senate.
Are
So
you saying that's going to happen this time? Is that what you're
I
thinking?
don't I don't know. I'm just saying that the race at the top affects the races all the way down the scale. It affects the state
Oh
legislators.
yeah, but I think that's what Rogette is saying that she's seen. Oh, well, you go ahead. I won't talk for you, Rogette. What are you saying?
I do think that Trump is trying to package himself as a victim, and I will admit that he has his base and they are strongly
Oh
behind
yeah.
him. I could definitely cannot deny that. But if you want to look at the polls also show that he loses to President Biden. But other Republican candidates, including Nikki Haley, has actually is ahead of President Biden, or at least closer to. So again, the question for me for him is, can he expand that base? You
You know,
can't win with just a base. He's going to have to at least be able to bring in some independence, and he hasn't been able to do that for years. Even with candidates that he endorses, they haven't been running over the past 2-3 years. So can he expand on that?
I hear what you guys are saying about the polls, but I'm going to tell you, I don't put a whole lot of credence in the polls anymore because
Joyce,
it's
there
just
may be
being
one thing
wrong. So
that we agree on that
we know we
I
do.
just think, they
But
take
you
it
can't use
forward.
the polls when they go your way, and then
Exactly.
not
No,
use them when they don't.
exactly. You
That's
just
They're,
got to doubt them all.
they're a fact
Really.
of life out there, and you have to deal with it. But I just, I think in truth that one of Donald Trump's biggest assets is Joe Biden. Uh, he is on two levels. The policy level, I mean, what people are paying for gas and eggs and all that kind of thing, but also this, incredible situation with his mental and physical capabilities. And he's going to be in the glare all the way through to election day. And I'll just take a wild guess here that tomorrow can be different than today, and 2 weeks can be different from tomorrow, and all that kind of thing. And it's unpredictable. We have absolutely nobody has
We have
absolutely
nobody.
any
But
idea.
but remember, the point that we're making is both of them are pretty much about the same age with the same vulnerabilities. So we're going to be watching both of those. And we've heard the polls, if you believe them, are saying that a lot of people think both of them are too old for the
Trump's
grueling.
energy level, though, is pretty unique.
Yeah, but the other
Well,
thing
and if we're going by age, we would be getting rid of pretty much the whole Congress and especially the Senate.
well,
I
yeah,
mean,
well, there might be a
if
reason for
we,
that. I might,
Well,
if we want to,
not
if
to
we
put
really
too
want to get into age,
I
not
don't
to
know.
put
I
too
might.
not to put too fine a point on it, but some of us do remember the slogan from our youth, never trust anyone over 25. In
What's the
which
quote?
case the three of us are over.
There you go. But I will say that the one point that we can discuss before we wrap this up, and that is I am still baffled because it just would make sense that the Republican Party would say, you know what? Almost anybody we put up against Joe Biden would win. Right? We would, but we're not doing that. We're not taking the surefire bet of a Nikki Haley or somebody that would go up and then they could really ram it home. He's too old. He's too old. Look at our young lady. Look. But they're not doing this. This is, to me, this is baffling. Why won't they take the sure shot of winning?
Well, I think that there are some Republicans on the Trump side that see it's not a sure side of winning for Nikki Haley or anybody else. That Donald Trump is sui generis here in all of this. When you're in the farm show arena and there's 10,000 people going crazy in the middle of Pennsylvania, there's a message there, and I, nobody knows exactly how things will work out. You know me into political history, and when Senator John F. Kennedy was the Democratic nominee, people began to catch on to the whole JFK thing and the youth and all of this sort of stuff, and he would get swarmed at these rallies. They'd parade him in an open car
Yeah.
through the streets of Chicago or whatever. And on election night, it said that when he lost Ohio, he was standing in front of his colleagues there, Brother Bobby, et cetera, held up his hand, which was all scarred and clawed and red, and he said, "Ohio did that to me,"
Oh my God.
meaning they were going berserk, and yet I lost.
And yet he lost. But they were, well, that's another point. They could be screaming for you, yeah, yeah, and they not voting for you. So, Rogette, you have the last word on this.
This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. He controls the party. I mean, the RNC chair just stepped down. And he's going to be putting, his person in there. I mean, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party, and we'll have to see how long the Republican Party as a whole allows it to stay that way.
Well, we have a lot, as you well know, that is coming at us. That's going to be ahead. We have a long way to go before those elections in November. And the truth is, as you said, anything could happen between now and then, including to the candidates that are now
And
appearing.
I will say, Joyce, Rogette is onto something there. And I would just say this is the way of the world of the American presidential system. When Barack Obama was riding high, the Democratic Party was the party of Obama. Ditto JFK all those years ago. Ditto the party of Ronald Reagan when he was there. When one particular party has the White House and their president is powerful or loved or hated or what have you, that party for that period of time does become the party of fill in the blank. So it's Donald Trump's turn at this point. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
And and Republicans who normally are very much hawkish on defense, national security, there's not any squeamishness about the NATO stuff.
Oh, I think that they believe that Trump believes in peace through strength. And
they don't mind that kind of work, that kind of rhetoric out there. They don't mind.
No, because they know that at bottom, the message he sends to leaders is if you fool around, big trouble. As witness, what was his name? The Iranian Revolutionary Guard general who found himself on the receiving end of a drone attack. That Trump doesn't mince words and he means what he says. Trump himself talks about
But Jeffrey, that's why I'm worried that he means to encourage Putin to invade Europe. That I don't want him to mean that.
Oh,
really
no, I don't think.
hope he
I think.
doesn't mean that.
I think to the
Right.
contrary, Putin is saying he doesn't want to do it if Trump is president. He didn't do it when Trump was president. He waited till Biden was president, then he invaded Ukraine because he perceives weakness.
But he
You
had
know,
to prepare
Joyce,
for it before Biden. Yeah.
This is just frankly human nature and the lessons of history here. I don't care whether it's our era or the 1930s or, good Lord, the Roman Empire. If people perceived weakness, they're going to attack.
If people perceive weakness, they're going to attack, and they obviously perceived it with Ukraine. I mean, he must have thought this was the time to do it. Well, we're going to have to hold it there. There's a lot more that we're going to be watching in these coming weeks, so I really appreciate your being here with us, and I look forward to seeing you next week on another Battleground PA. Bye-bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.